Diversity just means just look at different people, look at different perspectives, look at different experiences, because we all come to the workplace with different perspectives, different experiences. If you really care and feel about diversity, it's not about checking the box. It's about, here's the reality. People need opportunities, people need chances when they're looking for employment. Until there's full equality everywhere on everything, we still have work to do.
Sabrosura patique.
Necesito un nuevo sticker. We have a new brand. Hello, everyone. Yo soy Pam, your host of Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast exploring stories that inspire Latine and people of the global majority to embrace their voice, challenge calladita culture, and step into their power. At Café con Pam, we celebrate those who break barriers, change lives, and make the world a better place. El día de hoy, we have a conversation with Liliana Bernal. Liliana is the founder and CEO of Balanced Diversity, a recruiting and workforce solutions provider helping clients build a workforce that is reflective of our communities. Through her work, Liliana is dedicated to helping people thrive and reach their full potential. También, she's passionate about women in business, and she spent 2 years, excuse me, and she spent 2 years as board president of the Sacramento chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners. El día de hoy, she remains in leadership because women business owners matter. Antes de tener un negocio, Liliana was a senior executive at a global billion-dollar staffing company where she put together a successful track record of year-over-year growth and grew the market to becoming the most profitable in the company. Liliana's most notable achievement is making an impact through becoming a successful entrepreneur. Cuando ella no está impacting lives on the job, she is also creating memories through travel and shared experiences con su familia and friends. Bueno, listeners, primero, this conversation with Liliana, of course, it was great. I learned a ton. We kind of like broke down the idea of what it is to work with a recruiter or a recruiting company, and if you are currently affected by the layoffs or job searches, etc. This conversation with Liliana might give you some hope. It might give you also some support in the sense that you may not know the power of working with a recruiter and how it might help in your career ultimately. Also, for those of you watching on YouTube, the camera that Liliana was using, there was some glitches happening. And so the video on her end cuts in and out. And so I'm giving you this kind of like little caveat if you're watching it on video, because you will still be able to hear her, which is what's important here. And the videos, for some reason, it cuts in and out at some parts of the interview. So just know that. Y bueno, sin más, here's my conversation with Liliana Bernal. Liliana, welcome to Café con Pam.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So the first question we always ask is, what is your heritage?
So I am foreign born. I was born in Colombia, South America. My parents are from Colombia, and I think 2 generations before them. I'm trying to do a family history to see like where do we come from before them, but a few generations from Colombia.
Yeah, the whole history thing, it's kind of like we don't know, right? It's like from this land, but is it really?
Yeah. And I was having the conversation with my mom. I saw her over the holidays, and I went to Tulum last year, and I was just enchanted by the whole Mayan ruins and just the history of the Mayans. And people there are so into their history and their ancestors and their culture. So I was asking her, I'm like, we all came from one place. It's like either someone came from Spain or someone came from some indigenous, so who were the indigenous people of Colombia? Because I don't know. And like, she didn't really even know the answer. So now I'm making me think, I want to go back and find it.
Ooh, that's a fun journey to embark into, no?
Yeah. It could take me down a total rabbit hole, though. You never know.
Total rabbit hole. So, born in Colombia, but when did you get to the US?
Immigrated with my parents when I was 3 years old.
So basically raised here.
Raised. I tell people, yes, raised in America, but raised by parents that were immigrants. And, so I was still raised very Latina. I was raised, very much in that culture. My mom was the oldest of her family, a very large family. And when she came to the United States, she brought her whole entire family with her. So we don't have traditional American kind of traditions. I mean, they've evolved over the years, but was still raised almost like I was Colombia, but we just weren't living in Colombia.
Total. And are you the eldest?
I am a middle daughter in between two boys. My older brother, though, unfortunately was killed in a car accident when I was about 19. So then I
Oh,
became the oldest. Yeah,
wow. The older brother is the one who passed.
my older brother. Yeah,
So then you became by default kind of like the eldest daughter.
yeah,
So sorry about that.
yes.
And how was it after that unfortunate tragedy to become the eldest daughter for you?
It's a very interesting cultural thing. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the book that I contributed to. And I spoke about it a little bit in the book because, a middle daughter in between two boys, first of all, you're kind of that. I was that go-to person. I was the mediator. I was the one, but I was always I was very rebellious from a young age. And I was always the one that had the big ideas. And I could convince my older brother to do pretty much anything. Right. So I never felt like I took a seat back, but interestingly, where I did take a seat back is, I mean, my parents were everything was kind of dependent on my older brother. I think not only because he was the oldest, but because he was a boy.
Mhm.
Invested a lot of time in his education, invested a lot of time in kind of who he was going to become in the world, and he was going to be the one that was going to take the family to the next place, right? So it was kinda nice because it left me alone a little bit. I didn't have to worry about a lot of things, but then all of a sudden when that happened, of course, and it was during such a tough age for me, it was very difficult to all of a
Yeah.
sudden step into that. And not just that, I stepped into it, but then my parents all of a sudden were like, "Oh my god, this is our child that was," I mean, got accepted into law school. He was getting ready to go to law school. I mean, so his career and everything. So I think for my parents, it was just as much devastating because it created kind of this whole just kind of break.
Mm. And so did you, like, internalize it and decided to go to the success path? Kinda like, well, there were these expectations for him. How do I kinda, like, not necessarily fill the pants, but take on that role?
No, I think I internalized it the negative, the opposite way, right? It was, part of it was all of a sudden I could not deal with that responsibility. I very quickly saw the responsibility then that was my responsibility to my parents, right? I also could just not live with the guilt. I mean, it was difficult to have the guilt of saying, "Oh my god, like he was the one," right? And now everyone was looking at me and I was like, "Wait a second, I'm 19. I wasn't prepared for this." So I moved
Yeah.
out, and I tell people it's like I moved out when my dad was out of town because I didn't even have the guts to be like, "I'm moving out." Yeah, like, that's when I say, like, culturally, I mean, I was raised in America, but raised very, very Latina. Yeah, so, like, didn't ask for permission to move out, but I could not. I knew that I needed to think about myself at that moment, and I needed to be selfish because I was having difficulty just the weight of that, of the pressure, the weight of their pain, their suffering, and I was like, "I need to remove myself from the situation so I can figure out who I am now and who I need to be." So it was very interesting times.
Wow. So you move out when dad is out of town,
Yes.
and what's the backlash?
There was a little bit of a backlash, of course, for a bit. My mom, I was able to be pretty honest with her, and it was sad. It was sad because I mean she had no energy at that moment to fight me, but I knew I needed to do it. So the backlash was kind of like, how are you doing this to us right now when we need you the most, right? Um, the backlash to the other thing was, well, we're not gonna. Okay, you're making this decision. You're doing this decision on your own. Good luck with you, right? So to this day, I mean, and I was 20 when I moved out. Like I left without asking my parents for anything. It's very difficult ever for me to ask them for any money or anything. Like I was going to survive on my own because I was not going to go back and say I need help.
Mm. And they didn't. You took off and you were like, "Let's go." Did you have a plan?
I think as much of a plan as a 20-year-old has at that time. The most important thing was, okay, I need to get an apartment. I found a roommate, and I now need really full-time employment. So I stopped going to school. I dropped out of school to work full time. So that was my plan. Was I'm just gonna see what I need to do.
Which moving out before, like, you're engaged, before you get married is, like, not a thing in the Latino community.
No.
And so, if we have any listeners that are, like, non-Latinos, it's not a thing. Like, we stay home until we either get married, or here in the US, it would be go to college, but in Latin America, we don't. You go to college unless you're going to college, like, overseas or whatever, but typically it's in your town,
Hmm.
so, like, moving out is a big deal.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you move out, you find the roommate, get a job, and then how do you, like, fast forwarding a little bit, how is that transition, and how do you find the strength to keep going and not go back home? Did things get hard?
Oh my God, there were very hard times, and I never was able. And part of it was pride. Part of it was like, I'm gonna show, because there was so much. Are you sure you can do it on your own? I can't believe you're doing this. There was all the guilt, right? Let's talk about. First of all, I was
Mhm.
raised Catholic, so let's start with the Catholic guilt, and then let's go to the Latino guilt, because there is a lot of that Latino guilt, right?
Yep.
So the guilt just kept me from just saying. I mean, and there was times where, I think I have 3 jobs. I know what it's like to struggle and go, do I eat or do I pay rent? But I think the struggle is real, and anyone that looks at me now, they do not know that story, right? And it doesn't look like I lived any of that, but believe me, I lived it. Right. And it was dumb of it, some of it, because I had a family that could have supported me, but I needed to show that I could do it on my own.
For sure. And knowing what you know now, how did all of those experiences, how did they inform what you do now?
You know what? It made me realize, how much we can actually do, how strong we are, how capable we are, and what it makes me realize now, you wish your kids and you wish everybody else would listen when you're like, well, this is what, listen for me, but no one's going to listen to you until they experience it for themselves, really.
Mhm.
But it's just that perseverance. You realize what your superpowers are, you realize what you're good at, and it gives you confidence and it gives you strength, because you really realize you're capable of doing a lot, but it's just a matter of, you have to send your mind to it. Like, we can do anything that we really set our minds and our hearts to do.
Did you ever have a time when you were like, "I don't know," like, I almost giving up?
Oh yeah, lots of times. But I was not gonna go back home with my tail between my legs. And I was, like I said, I was very rebellious from the time I was very young. I was the only girl, and I remember having arguments with my mom where she was like, "Well, you have to do the laundry." And I remember once I got in trouble because, like, I took the laundry, and one day I realized, and I go, "Wait a second, why do I have to, like, do the laundry, fold it, put it away for my brothers, especially my older brother?" Right? And I'm like, he's fully capable of doing it. So I think I,
He
like,
has
dumped all the,
hands.
yeah, he has hands. I dumped all the clothes, like, on his bed or something, and I got in trouble from my mom when she got home, because she was like, and I said, "Look, it's enough that I'm helping out." My mom worked full time. So that was part of our chores, right? I'm like, "Look, I already washed it for them. They can put it away themselves. I don't need to put it away." So I always rebelled against, why? Because I'm the girl. Why?
Mhm.
Because I'm a woman, do I have additional chores? Or why do I have to do things differently? Why am I treated differently? Why can my brother go out with his friends, but I can't? Why can he have sleepovers and I can't? I was always that one that was always saying, I don't get why. So I was that person. I'm like, I am not gonna, and it would have been easy for me to just to say, I'm gonna get married and go find someone to help take care of me. But I was like, no, I'm on this journey now to figure out what I can do for myself. So I think I was even extra rebellious to say, no, I'm not gonna go find someone else to take care of me. I'm gonna do it for myself.
Menos.
Yeah, yeah.
So, as you're in this journey, how do you get into the recruiting world?
So, I one of my jobs was, I worked at a movie theater, and I started that job from being in high school, and I wanted to take on more responsibility, so they made me into a manager. And part of the management job was to do the interviewing, do the hiring, do the scheduling of the shifts, and then paying people. And that was back in the day when you literally did manual payroll. Like there was like tax books. There was
Right.
tax books where you had to look at it and you say, okay, if someone is one dependent, if they have two dependents, like you had to like look across and go, oh, this is how much they get deducted, right? So I learned how to do payroll manually. My first job was as doing payroll for a manufacturing company because of that experience. And then because of my recruiting experience, I worked for the HR department. They're like, "Oh, you have experience in recruiting." So little by little, I started getting, kind of more HR experience, and that was how I started my HR career and my recruiting experience. And I learned very quickly that I was pretty good at it.
And so, how long did you spend in corporate?
Oh my gosh. So I started my first corporate job when I was 22 years old. And up until my 50s, I was working in corporate America until 5 years ago. And I started my own company.
That's a career.
Oh, yeah. There's like a couple of careers.
Right. And so, what made you make the shift?
So I had been working for the same. So I started in HR and human resources, and then one of my jobs was to do the recruiting. But I worked with our staffing agencies that helped us with recruiting, and I had a good relationship with the woman. She owned her own company, and she used to help us with the recruiting as well. And she said, "You would be really good in this industry, the fact that I'm bilingual."
Mhm.
And she said, just think about this. If you ever have an opportunity to go into the staffing recruiting industry, think about it. And sure enough, I did. At one point, a friend of mine was working for an agency. They needed a bilingual recruiter. So I was like, me, I can do it. Right. So I started my career in the staffing industry back in the mid 90s. And I stayed in that industry up until 2019. And I only worked for two large companies. I had been with one company 19 years. I ran the West Coast market for them, very successful, did very well. The company was going through a lot of changes, and then they decided that they were going to eliminate my role.
Wow.
And it was a gift. They gave me a gift because I was unhappy. I never would have left on my own. I had a team. I had 100 individuals. My team was 100 people. I had a very large team. We worked together for some of us over 15 years. And even though I was unhappy, I never would have left that team behind. Right. So them giving me this gift for me to start thinking about doing something different, I tell people is the best gift that anyone could have ever given me because I don't know if I would have done it on my own.
Well, let's dissect that a little bit because how many times do people stay in places they don't want to be at anymore? What kept you there? So you talked about your team. So was it like the people? What kept you there?
Oh, a few things. One was the people. One was comfort. I was doing very well. Financially, I was doing well. I really loved my job and loved what I did. And this company, loved them, great training. They were they're started by two brothers back in the 1950s. So they were an entrepreneurial company. They kind of let each market and area do their own thing. But I knew that they were going through some trouble and they were actually looking to sell. So and then they got very corporate, they got very red tape, they got very, this is what we do, no flexibility. And I realized I'm just not meant for that. Like the little rebel in me, like that girl that was always like, why do I have to do it that way? Because I'm a girl. It was the same thing. It's like, well, wait a second. Why do we have to follow these rules when we're profitable? We're bringing in money. We have great clients. Like, explain to me, why do we have to do things differently? So and then I realized I'm not a very good corporate employee. I just didn't know that because but then I said, okay, I can do it for myself now. And how do I want to do it differently? But it was the team. Like I said, I had phenomenal tenure. We were very successful. And there it goes back to the guilt for me to think about leaving and leaving people behind. I wouldn't have been able to deal with that guilt.
Ooh, there's so much juice in
There's
there.
so much.
Yeah. So I talk about the 5 wounds of calladita culture, and one of them, like, the one that I'm, like, hearing a lot is, like, the wound of power. And it's really interesting because while you have this rebel in you of, like, "Why do I have to do this?" There was this part of you that was like, "And for the people, I'm, like, complying with whatever." So, when they decide that your role is eliminated, what happens to the people that you wanted to stay with?
So a few of them I was able to bring with me, a few I was able to find employment with. That was my big thing is like I need to make sure that they're okay, right?
100 people?
Well, not 100. I had a team of 100 in all different positions. I probably had 20 people that were direct reports that were close to me. I mean, but I ran a very large market. I was responsible for a very large territory. So For those that were the closest and the most important to me, that was kind of my commitment is I'm going to help you be okay. Because it's kind of like when I moved out, right? I realized that I got to the point where it's like I need to do this for myself, right? I need to now think for myself, watch out for myself, but at the same time too in the back of my mind I was always thinking, but if I take care of myself and I find good places, and then I can help other people find good places.
For sure. So you go on your own. Let's put a pin on that and let's take a quick coffee break.
Okay.
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
So, Liliana, do you drink coffee? You're Colombian.
Oh my God, I do. And actually, I have my coffee. I poured it right before we got, it's in my solo cup. But Café Bustelo is one of my favorite K cup. So if anybody doesn't drink Café Bustelo, I'm going to put a plug in. I've been drinking that coffee for years and years. Have you ever, do you know of it? Have
I
you?
have had Bustelo, yes. Yeah. It's it's kind of like a I don't know, legacy brand, I guess.
It is, and it's funny. It was started by a Cuban, and I know one of your questions to ask is like, "What's your favorite coffee shop?" And I don't know if I have a favorite coffee shop. My favorite is drinking coffee at home, especially in the morning. But whenever I am in Florida, my favorite coffee is un cortadito, which is your
Of
typical
course.
Cuban.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. On my end, I'm not drinking coffee cuz my cutoff, which I mean, people that have listened to me forever, a long time ago I'm like my cutoff is 1 or 2 p.m. and then went up to 12 and now 2025, year 2025, we are at like 10:30. It's
Oh,
my cutoff time for caffeine. I know. So, I'm drinking tea at this point. This is my time. We're talking around noon, so it's
hmm
way past my caffeine cutoff. But this morning, I had I had cacao, so I'm very much into cacao now,
hmm
rather than I mean, I'm still into coffee, so I still drink coffee, but my first drink is cacao from using ceremonial cacao, not cocoa or hot chocolate. It's actual cacao. The whole thing. And it's really heart opening. It has theobromine. Like, I don't want to go into an ADHD rabbit hole about cacao, but it's really something that's helped me a lot recently. And then I transitioned into coffee, which this morning I just had regular schmegular mushroom coffee that I usually do.
hmm
And I do a little tiny splash of milk. Do you drink yours black?
I drink it with a little bit of milk. Just a little bit. I mean, and creamers, right? I really like coconut creamer. I like oat creamer. But I can't do it black. I sometimes do it black if I'm fasting, and I know I really want a cup of coffee and I don't want to break that fast. I got used to drinking black coffee, but it has to be really good coffee to drink it black.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. You can't just do any coffee black.
Mm-mm, no. When I was listening to some of your shows and you're talking about coffee, you think about kind of your memories growing up, right? And my memory is so my grandmother, she didn't work when she came over from Colombia. And I remember anytime you went to my grandmother's house, anytime you walked in, the first thing anybody always got is, ¿quieres un tinto?
Mm.
And back in the day, they used to do it in something that looked like a sock. Like I don't remember what these like those drainer ones, and she would have it with the coffee in their coffee grounds and on a pot. And every once in a while, she'd pour some water in it. But there was always coffee on the stove. And even us as kids, when we were young, that was her first thing she would offer us. Like it didn't matter how old you were gonna have a tinto. You were gonna have some cafe with her.
Wow.
hmm
That's odd. Like always coffee
Always,
on tap.
anytime, any
Fun.
time of the day, anytime.
That's wild. My brother can drink coffee literally. Like it's 8 o'clock. He can have a cup of coffee and go to sleep 20 minutes later. Like this is not a big deal.
Yeah,
I am not like that. So I do I do like look at those people and I'm like, how fun. But I don't know. At the same time, I'm like, I would be drinking coffee all day. Like my kidneys, I don't know.
yeah, wouldn't be good for you.
No. Okay, let's get back to the show. Let's talk about something we all deserve: financial empowerment. Whether you're tackling debt, planning for retirement, or starting that dream business, navigating your finances can feel overwhelming. But it doesn't have to be. thanks to Savvy Ladies. Savvy Ladies is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping women like you take control of your financial future. They offer free resources, webinars, and my favorite, a free financial helpline where you can connect one on one with trusted financial experts. And yes, it's completely free. Whether you're just starting your financial journey or need guidance on a specific challenge, Savvy Ladies is here to provide quality and trusted advice you can count on. So why wait? Visit savvyladies.org today and connect with the financial helpline to get the personalized support you deserve. Your journey to financial independence starts here. That is savvyladies.org. Your path to financial freedom can start today. So you're in this recruiting space. Now, let's get it to the present moment. And what are your thoughts on all the things? How is that going to affect jobs?
Yeah. So my company name is called Balanced Diversity.
Mhm.
So I have the name diversity in my company, so I can't shy away from it, and I don't want to shy away from it. And I talk a lot. I've done some talking sessions, and I even talk to our clients and things about. Here's the thing: is diversity to me has never meant see and check in a box, right? Because in the recruiting world, in the HR world, we've had equal employment opportunity reports and everything in California that we've had to do for years. It's like check how many people that you hired in all these different areas. Um,
Mhm.
and that was a whole affirmative action thing that came out, and oh god, I can't remember the year. But, that's not the true intent. If you really care and feel about diversity, it's not about checking the box. It's about here's the reality. People need opportunities, people need chances when they're looking for employment. And I have always held a special place in my heart, and our focus when I started the company was to help underserved and help underrepresented individuals in the job market, because those are the individuals that don't know how to respond to a posting or feel, they just don't know the whole process. Does not mean that they're not good employees, doesn't mean that they have phenomenal skills. They just are kind of lost in the system a little bit.
Hmm.
And that's been my favorite thing, even though we recruit for all different levels of positions. Honestly, what makes me the happiest is especially new immigrants, individuals that don't know how to handle it. Most people find employment through their networking and through their referrals, right? But that's thinking about people. And that's why, if you really think about people that have had opportunities and that are privileged, it's because of that big circle that they were able to make
Yes.
for themselves, right? Like when you go to Harvard, and you're an alumni of Harvard and you go to school with people that are going to find other jobs and they're going to help, they help bring you
Mhm.
along. Unfortunately, the immigrant community does not have that. The
Right.
underserved, underrepresented individuals do not have those kind of circles.
Yeah.
So that's where I have loved playing and making an impact, is helping those individuals, right? And it's been some of those individuals that have helped make a lot of money for me over the years, and and currently, because they're the best workers and they're the ones that really show up every day and do a good job. So regardless of what's going to happen, yes, I talk about, first of all, when did DNI become a dirty word?
Mhm.
Right? Because it's not a dirty word. And what I try and share with our clients is diversity just means just look at different people, look at different perspectives, look at different experiences, because we all come to the workplace with different perspectives, different experiences. And it's those perspectives and experiences that employers should be maximizing.
Totally.
It doesn't matter what race you are, if you're black, white, whatever you are, male, female, it's not just about that. That title, that label is not what defines you, because you come as one whole person.
Absolutely. So recently I was talking to someone who a business owner, and I shared my media kit and to sponsor Cafe Compa. And he said, "Well, your media kit just like screams DEI hire." And I'm like, "Oh, well." And he's like, "I'm not interested in." And I was like, "What?" And so, what would you say to like companies that might look at certain candidates and be like, "Oh, that's a DEI hire," versus like seeing the person as a whole instead of like where they come from.
Mhm. I just think right now it's too polarizing, right? There's a lot of raw nerves right now. There's a lot of sensitivity around it, and I just think there's so many quick decisions being made. It's interesting to watch it. But here's how I respond to people. I said, D&I again isn't just about checking a box and meeting an affirmative action number, right? D&I for any organization, first of all, look at any study. It shows that a more diverse employee base is a fundamental benefit to an employer,
Mm,
right? I guess the question, I turn it back on the company and say, what is it that you do? Let's give you an example. Let's just talk about a coffee company, right? If a coffee, someone's trying to sell coffee and they're saying, we're not going to support a D&I program, and then say, okay, but who are your customers? Who are your clients? Who are you selling to? Right. So DNI isn't about, it's about you're selling, first of all, women, anybody that talks about, equality towards women. First of all, women make 85% of all the purchases in their home, right? They control the purse strings, 85%. Ask any man, and any man is going to tell you that is 100% correct, right? That's how it happens in my family. So, first of all, if you're a consumer product, you're selling to women. So, what appeals to women? You're going to want to
right.
make sure that your product is appealing to women. So it's important for you to have women in your workforce that can give you that perspective.
Yes.
So I try and turn it around a little bit and take the conversation away from D&I. It's not about D&I. It's about who you are as a client and who you're selling to and who purchases your product and who you're attracting.
Totally.
And if you think we're equal anywhere, look at the numbers, right? Even women, we are more than 50% of the majority now, but yet we still make up less than 15% of board seats in public companies. We still make up less
Mhm.
than 30% of the CEOs. So until there's full equality everywhere on everything, we still have work to do in terms of diversifying a little bit.
I mean, there's still so much more work could be done. And so you work both with companies and employees and
Yes.
candidates, right?
Yes.
How could a candidate prepare themselves to I don't I don't want to say dodge the DEI conversation, but to kind of like counter when they say, "Oh, we're at our quota for DEI hires." How could they be like, "Well, I can still bring a lot of substance to this company."
hmm
Or is it that maybe that company's not for them?
My first thing would be that company is not for you. Because if they're looking at all your skills and they're looking at your background and they're seeing you as a quota, and then they're basically doing what people are saying DNI does,
Mm,
right? They're just doing it on the reverse discrimination side, quite honestly.
right.
So, yeah, so if that's important to you, and it's not gonna be as important to everyone, but you have to think about what kind of company, because if that's the type of company, it's not the right organization for you. And then I would take it back and try and not be seen as for whatever label they're thinking about you as, whether they're looking at you as a woman, as a white individual, as a black, as a Latino, as a person of color. Go to your hard skills and go to those things that set you apart, right? Not the fact that you are, what you represent on the outside. It's really difficult conversations. And I think the best thing to do is, just remove yourself from kind of that instance or that DNI and really showcase and focus on what's important to you as an individual, what's important to you in a job as well too.
For sure.
Don't let them push your buttons.
Yeah, and what would you say to companies now given that, DI budgets are being cut and all the things? How could they still work with individuals that come from different backgrounds? Because to your point of what you said earlier, having diversity inside of the workplace brings a lot of really different perspectives, which in turn could turn into better business.
hmm Yeah. I mean, a lot of the factors that's affecting what's happening with D&I, a couple of them are financial, but a lot of them are more in legal regulations. I think companies were just tired of having to fill out the reports and having to come up with a quota, right? Because anytime there's a quota, and then there's always going to be someone that's going to be left out and they're going to say, well, how do I fall into that quota? So it's like remove quota, remove all of those, obligations, but think about what is your, what's your strategic, what do you want, where do you want to be as an organization in 5 years, right? And like I keep on saying, I mean, most companies either produce a product, sell something or provide a service, right?
Mhm.
So it's think about how companies have to be reflective of the communities that they serve and they support, right? That's 100% regardless of what you do. So take it back to you want to be representative of those communities. Because at some point, employees, this next generation of employees, are looking at your mission and looking at how represented you are in the workforce. They don't want to work for an all white organization, right?
Right.
They want diversity. You have to think about how you're going to attract your workforce, how are you going to keep them happy, and at the same time too, what are your consumers and what are the people that, buy your products going to think about your makeup as well too.
Totally.
So forget about legal. Think about what's important to you and that's your bottom line. How's it going to affect your bottom line?
Yeah. And so for just because the climate that like we're recording this in January of 2025. I mean, this podcast is evergreen, but if somebody listens to to this year of, I don't know, 2050, I don't know. But as of today, there's a lot of changes and like maybe even layoffs into your point that you mentioned earlier. Our community doesn't have the contacts and the network and the outreach. And so what would you say to people that maybe were laid off and don't have the resources and network? Is that when they would come work with you?
Yes, yes. And then also, when you know that something is so polarizing, my advice to anyone, let's just say someone came to me and they were just laid off because they were a director of diversity and inclusion at their company, right? My advice to them would be like, we can't change what's happening. We can fight about it a certain way, but this is where words matter. Modify your words a little bit, right? The big thing is, okay, so maybe diversity is not, like I said, when did it become a bad word? Because it is. We can't
Mm,
change that. But here's what's important in every organization is belonging,
yeah.
right? Everyone wants to belong, regardless of who you are. Part of what's happening is because people are feeling like they didn't belong in that DEI equation. So they're saying it's not fair for everyone, right?
Mm,
So if you know workforce optimization, if you know workforce alignment, talent acquisition is still very important to everyone because regardless of how people hire, we right now are in a workforce challenge. There's not enough people to fill all the jobs that we currently have. That's a reality.
mm. And on the other hand, I'm hearing that there's not enough jobs.
There's not no. I think part of the biggest challenges is that people struggle with how to find employment and people really the technology. I mean, we have people that tell us that they applied for 400 jobs and they never got a phone call.
Yeah.
And then we look at them and we send their resume right away to a client and they're like, "Oh my god, this person is phenomenal. We want to hire them." People are lost in the shuffle right now.
Yeah. Why is that?
Oh my gosh, I think that's gonna be like that has to be a much longer podcast, but a lot of it is technology. A lot of it is AI. AI is not a friend to the hiring community. I tell people like we're gonna let an algorithm and a non-person handle what is one of the most personal things that people go through is finding a job.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people. And then at the same time too, the biggest cost factor for any employer is their talent. And they're gonna let like an algorithm or something that's non-human decide the talent that they're gonna bring into their organization. Like that just to me is mind blowing,
Totally.
right?
How are you dealing with the AI piece?
You know what? We have to embrace it. We have to learn. We have to learn how to make it our friend. It does help from an efficiency perspective, but our mission is to keep the humanity in the recruiting business because we're still dealing with human beings.
Totally. It's frightening.
It's frightening.
I was talking to one of my clients and like it's different but kind of similar because he needs in the context of or in the same kind of like path of the network, he is looking to get into this ecosystem that he doesn't have a network in for with, I don't know, prepositions. And so he was like going into networking events and signing up to networking events. And he signed up to one. And he was like, Pam, this is very scary because this is a paid networking event. So he paid money for it. And in the welcome email, like you're in type email, it said you're going to be matched with our intuitive artificial intelligence tool. You're going to be matched with people alike so that when you arrive at the networking event, you have someone to chat with. And he was, and like, this is a black man. And so he's like, does that mean that I'm going to be matched with the other two black people that are in the room? Does that mean I'm going to, like, what does that mean? And so that conversation made me think of what you're saying is how much can we trust those AI tools to make the best decision? I don't know if we can.
Mhm. It'll be interesting. The first thing that I thought of, though, actually, I think that's pretty cool, and I'm hoping that the AI tool takes the biases out of it, because 'cause I'm hoping that they don't ask for race or
Right.
anything, because how would AI know that he was black? But I'll give you an example. I've been to a lot of networking events where, seriously, you see all the black people together and you see all the Latino people together.
Yes. Naturally happens.
It naturally happens. So it'd be really neat to have networking events where you're matched based on your skills and on maybe your perspectives versus the color of your skin, because you're afraid to go talk to someone that you don't think has anything in common with you, but they really might.
So, I mean, there's like many sides to a coin. So,
Hmm.
while the AI tool could be beneficial, also from a recruiting standpoint, we don't know. And I'm sure you've seen already in your field, like you said, people are lost in the shuffle.
Hmm.
So, for people currently looking to maybe find a job, what would you say are the three things that they need to do besides contacting your company?
Yes. I love the idea of that your friend said that to look for work, he's networking. You have to think outside the box. You've got to, first of all, you've got to think about how do I get my circle from this much to like this big, because your circle is what's going to help influence you. I mean, there's great tools. I mean, LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool because you can find most people, right? So if you really are targeting a specific company, first do your research about them. Go find people that work there that maybe might be connected to somebody else. Most people we're still human beings, and we all get that looking for work is really difficult. And most people would be open to, let's just say, if someone found me that I worked for a company who had experience working in an industry or company they were interested in. Look me up and say, "Can I have 15 minutes of your time? I'm looking for employment here. I have this experience here."
Mhm. Make the connection for sure.
It's huge. You do have to put in the extra work. Just, responding to black holes and hoping that you're going to get call, you know, might happen, but you're taking a lot of chances.
Totally. Now, for the people that may have never worked with a recruiter or a recruiting company, could you give us an overview of how does it work?
Yes, and all recruiting companies are different, right? And our industry and recruiters, we've gotten a bad name for ourselves because, they say the same thing. I talk to recruiters and they never get back to me, right? But it's,
Mm,
you're talking to a lot of people. It's kind of like the doctors. You go to a doctor now. You're like, I used to remember the day when I used to spend an hour with my doctor, and now what happens? You're seen by everybody else, and then you maybe get 5 minutes with your doctor, right?
yes.
Recruiters kind of the same thing, right? You might not get as much time. So the time that you spent with the recruiter, make that time valuable, right? What's going to help me stand apart? So use them really in that. In most cases, they'll answer some tough questions for you, right?
So, to even clarify it even more, and you said they work different, but many times the recruiter makes, like, you make money from the company, not the candidate.
Exactly. Any recruiter that's a viable recruiter will not charge anyone anything looking for employment. If anybody's going to charge you any money looking for employment, you're not dealing with a reputable recruiter. Yes. So think about it. Our time is extremely valuable because if we don't find someone for our client, we don't get paid.
Right. For sure. Because I know I've talked to people that are looking for jobs, and I'm like, talk to a recruiter. Because when I was in corporate, I would get people from the recruiter, from like one person that was our recruiter. And it saves so much time and effort from everyone.
Hmm.
Because typically the people that would come, they would come already vetted. They would be pretty much qualified.
Mhm.
And so the other thing is, and I don't know if it's still like this because this is like 10 years ago, but I think we got like 6 months with the candidate to make sure that it was like 100% a good fit, and then, like, whatever the fee for the recruiter it was. And so I think it's a win-win, no, to work with one? It would save people a lot of headaches. I don't know why people don't work with recruiters as much.
You know what? Because it's tough. So many people have said have had a bad experience, right? We are very specialized. We work with the smaller. We've chosen to stay more boutique because we want that customer service. We want that. We still physically make a phone call into all of our candidates, right? Um, but then there's recruiters that deal in mass numbers. So there's a really good chance that unless you're looking like you're going to be the top 10% of candidates, you're not going to get a phone call from them.
Mm,
At the same time, too, our business has been commoditized a lot. What I mean by that is, it's like it's a volume number, it's a volume game, and we're throwing a lot of candidates in some cases to our clients. So sometimes, our clients don't even give us feedback. They just tell us, sorry, we're not moving forward with that person. So we don't always have feedback to give someone. So
wow.
it's just like any relationship. You're going to get out of the relationship what you're going to put out of it, but know that a recruiter has a job to do.
Mhm.
And if you're not going to help them be successful, then kind of be prepared. And we have very tough feedback for candidates, right? We'll tell people, why do you have a 2-year gap on your resume? And it's difficult for people because they take it personal. They get defensive because
Yeah.
it's their life. It's them. We totally get it. But we ask really tough questions. It's like going to the doctor and you're saying, well, I need to lose weight. And the doctor goes, but what is all the stuff that you're eating, right? And then they're like, okay, but you're never going to lose weight if you keep on eating like that. So sometimes you have to hear that tough love.
Mm, for sure. Okay, so tell us all the places and spaces where we can find you.
Oh my gosh. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And I will reach out to people if someone sends me, a very thoughtful message. Our website, and I know you have the information, but our company website is on there. Our company has social media. I myself don't do a lot of social media just because it's a lot, but you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the best place that you can find me from a business perspective. I also speak on a few podcasts. I speak at events. I'm very passionate about workforce, about DNI, also about women entrepreneurs and women in the workplace.
So we'll put all the links in the show notes, and for both companies want to attract talent, they can reach out to you.
Yes.
Candidates that may be looking for jobs in any industry?
We don't do hospitality. We do administrative. We do some skilled labor. We don't do IT. So it's mainly administrative, skilled labor, customer service, professional roles. We don't do healthcare. We don't have
Okay,
licenses. We don't do like doctors, nurses. But pretty much most jobs in corporate America today we can support.
nice. And so did you just go to the site,
Yep.
go to that place where it says candidates, and then go from there?
Yes. Yes. And there's friends and people that will say, can you do a resume review? We will, myself and my team, we will do resume reviews, but I tell people as long as they're prepared for the tough love, because I will give them honest feedback about their resume. And I'm not going to make promises
Nice.
or guarantees because we would love to employ everyone that reaches out to us. But the reality is that, there's limited time and resources. We will help as much as we can.
Totally. Amazing. Well, last few questions. Do you have a remedio you want to share with us?
Oh my gosh, yes. I was thinking about this and like, oh, for me, I loved reading through some of the old ones. I think for me, then it's still like an old one is aguasal. And I don't know if you guys, I still have my tonsils, so I get a sore throat quite a bit. And anytime I feel like something is in my throat, you take hot water, as hot as you can take it in your mouth, you put some salt in it, and you do gargles. You just gargle with it, and it clears up whatever you have in your throat that
Nice.
might be getting you sick. Hmm.
Yes. It reminds me of that quote. It's one of my favorites. It says, "Salt water cures everything, tears, sweat, and the ocean."
Oh, I love that. Yes.
So fun. And speaking of quotes, do you have a quote or mantra that you live by in this moment?
Yes, I'll share one of my favorite, and I might be changing it a little bit. People show you who they really are. You just have to pay attention.
That's right. That's right. What a good one. And the last question I haven't asked this in a while is, do you have a productivity tip, trick, or tool you want to share with us?
One of my favorite things that I've been using for the past 6 months is Calendly. because I do reach out to a lot of people and I say, people ask me for time, and here's a link to my calendar. If you can find time on there, and then like
Yes.
that, oh my God, the going back and forth, are you available at this time, this day? I
Oh
don't
my
have
God.
patience for
Yes.
that. So that is one of my favorite, because I just send them the link and I say, here's my calendar. I just have to make sure it gets updated, because I've screwed it up where I didn't block myself out for a whole day and someone schedules something and then I feel horrible because I'm like, it was my fault, you know, but
Yeah.
love it.
I concur. I love calendar links because, ugh, it just saves so much time. So much time.
Hmm.
Well, Liliana, thank you so much for coming to Cafe con Pam and sharing all the things of what's happening and your thoughts on workplace, DEI, recruitment. It's a timely topic, I think,
Yes.
today. And thank you for your work.
Together we're all going to make a difference, and then some of this is going to slow down a little bit, right? I think we just have to have the conversations, don't shy away from them, talk about it, because it's the reality.
For sure. We're here. We exist here. Let's continue to show up for sure. Well, thank you so much. That was my conversation. If this podcast has ever inspired you, here are some ways you can support us so we can keep going for many, many more episodes. Some free ways to do it. You can leave a rating and a review on your podcast app. You can subscribe on YouTube and share this episode with someone you love. If you have some coins you want to drop on us, because we are still an indie podcast and we're still funding everything, you can join the supporters club to get exclusive content, sometimes behind the scenes, fun things. You can also enroll in Gather Circle if you are interested in working with me. This is my annual program to help you break free from silence and reclaim your power. You can also hire me to speak at your organization or company so we can continue to bring conversation like this to more people, organization, company, and even school. Let's stay connected on the socials at Cafe Con Pan Podcast on Instagram and Facebook and all the places and spaces. Screenshot, tag us, tell us what resonated from this episode. Y bueno, muchas gracias for listening. Nos vemos pronto and stay shining.
Sabrosura pa' ti que